I see that we are going down to very philosophical questions, like why do we exist as an industry? How do we contribute to society? What's the difference that we make?
So, how's it all going?
Yeah, it's okay. So a couple of things. It's going pretty. Going pretty well. I was just explaining to my team here at SpotMe that because most of them joined the company in the past 2 to 3 years, and we were at the time we were fast growing but relatively established in the space with a mature technology and all of these things, and now we're just going through this fantastic and very fascinating moment of like relaunching the company, and it's working extremely well, but it's happening like at 10x the speed that I've done in the past. So that's incredible.
Can you describe the last few months at the SpotMe HQ?
SpotMe has offices in Singapore, in the US, and in Europe. So I first got a call from Singapore saying, hey, we've got all those events being canceled. I didn't really pay a lot of attention. I was like, right, that's one of these things going to calm down. And then I think it was mid-February, I was touring all our biggest US customers, and every meeting I was coming in, it was like, hey, excuse me, I have to take a phone call. And then coming back, oh, our sales kickoff is canceled, and then you're seeing all these things happening. And it was like a whole domino effect. And my first reaction when I saw all of this was like, oh my God, that's the end of the industry. That's the end of the company. And we immediately took a lot of, measures, and then also very quickly sent everyone home. To make it very short, we had in our drawer a virtual event solution. Actually, it was on our website for years. It was like 3% of the revenue. It was one client who pushed us to do it a couple of years ago. And we quickly took that one off and out of the drawer, and we sent this to all of our customers. And very early on in March, we actually staged a webinar where we say that's the product everyone should be using. And then we went on full on relaunching that product. And what I've learned, it was fantastic. We've never been that productive with having all the team working from home. So that was like the most humbling learning for me, because I'm a big proponent of like being in the office. And we relaunched that, and then suddenly we went from being like probably the worst company to invest and work for to one of the best, because we're now experiencing 15 times the demand than we were sort of getting in, let's say, January or February. So now it's all like completely, flipped, and it's extremely exciting. Some people are back to the office, and there's also this sense of mission and purpose. I was just telling the team, we were nice to have as an event app company, and right now we are mission critical. And that's much, much different from like, hey, why do you wake up every day?
Amazing, just thinking back that, this all really properly kicked off for people, this world of virtual, just 3 months ago. And when we look at where we were 3 months to compare to where we are now, in so many of the different aspects within virtual event, it looks completely different. And I know if we were to have this conversation in December, it would be really different again. I think the events industry, this is as devastating and as sad as it is for so many people within our industry and out with our industry. I believe that the industry needed something like this to actually make it start to look at the products and the services it's been delivering for the last, you could say 100 years, and do things differently. And
I've been 20 years in the industry, and the past 3-4 years, I was getting more and more angry at like the status quo, which is everyone's fault, right? It's our fault as a technology provider. But things they were not moving, right? They were not moving, and both on the client side and both from like the ecosystem, it was more, everyone was talking about consolidation, which means nothing happens except company got bought. And if you try to innovate, it's like, are you the biggest player in the field? Yes, no, okay, go away, thank you. And so I think this is like maybe a reset. I see that we are going down to very philosophical questions, Like, why do we exist as an industry? How do we contribute to society? What's the difference that we make? People are like, okay, are we putting lives at risks as opposed to are we pushing for the economy? And I see all those important questions in the balance, and I think these are all very, very good things. So I'm with you, right? This was a much needed push, and whatever happens, I think it already had a tremendous, of course, negative impact for a lot of people, but now we're going to see a lot of positive coming out of it.
I've been speaking about the need for people to run virtual events for a long time, 10 years probably. And when I've been doing my consultancy in organizations, I've been saying to them, we're looking at your physical events, but would you consider doing virtual? Or how can we help you bring in an online audience? And, hand on heart, no one was interested. It was just a complete conversation stopper. And I've been saying to them, look, events are great, but they have a big negative impact. If you're flying 2,500 people across the globe to attend your physical event, that's not great, and that's not sustainable as an industry. If you're creating 1,000 meals that no one's eating and you're throwing that away, that's not great. And these are the things that we need to think about our physical events. So taking this sustainable approach to our physical events, I've been getting a little bit of traction, but now I'm able to say to people, do you need to run that physical event at all? Because the best way to make a positive impact on your environmental, your environmental impact is not to run that physical event. And I think people are open to this now because the last 3 months have seen that there's a lot of value that can be added from virtual events. So I really hope that this is the opportunity to make these significant changes.
My standpoint was more like, do you create a result out of it? Do you get what you need? Does it create more business? Does it create more leads? Does it create more engagement? Does it create... And over the last couple of years, I've started to see people not caring about these things. I have this story of a client, of a German customer. It's a big tech company. We were delivering 350 feedback, 300 plus feedback forms. And one day I found out that those forms were never sent to anybody in this company. They were just sitting in an inbox. There was no...
It's a tick box. We have to ask the attendees, but we don't do anything with it.
So it's all these things that people have been doing. And of course, now that we see so you're coming from the environmental footprint, which is usually important. And I think it's beautiful if all these things, come together.
Let's talk a little bit about the platform then. Do you want to give me just an overview of what the platform does and maybe what makes it different from other virtual event platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the core, you're right. We were founded as a company. We were actually founded as a networking device, as a hardware device, which is what the company is called SpotMe. And it would help people connect with each other and find good contacts at an event. You could actually literally spot people. And then we went on being a mobile app. And so my story is that we've gone through through 4 different product cycles. And the one thing I really hated over years is telling no to people. I've learned that event organizers and marketers and CEOs, they want to do something very powerful with their brands. They want their event to be unique. They want they want it to be personalized. They want impression. Personalized leaves an impression. And the people who truly understand all these things about branding and personalization, they know that you cannot give the same thing to everybody. And as a result, but it's hard to build, right? Because you can make it custom, but that is also very expensive, and usually the quality is not great. So you have this sort of compromise between personalization, being tailored, and also being able to scale, doing quick at reasonable cost. And if you look at the industry, it's either like the commodity type of product, or it's like the handmade, I'm going to code this for you. So what I wanted us to be, and that's who we are at SpotMe, is just this right compromise between You don't need to code. We are a no-code platform, and yet our apps don't look alike. That's who we are. That's the big differentiator, being able to personalize, being able to tailor, to customize, to brand without coding, without also taking risks, and also on all platforms. So we do, and that's a big difference too, we do web, of course, but we also do Apple iOS and Android, because we believe, and we're going to talk about this, I hope, that the future is not only just online, but it's also hybrid. And even online, people have different habits, especially with on-demand, where they could watch this, at different places with their phones.
And the level of customer service, how do you feel that is built into the offer that you have?
Well, so it's interesting you bring this up, because to me it's normal. I would like to say I always want it to be better, but it's true that I hear people telling us that we do a lot of it and it's great. And I haven't really tried the other platforms. I think you have to give people the freedom. You want to be able to, personally, I'm more the type to Google stuff, and I want to see in the knowledge base the answer, and I think we do that well. But some other people, and if they're very busy, they want people to do it, or they want quick responses. And we also offer that. We actually have a very large team. We have close to 100 people in our professional services and support team around the globe who are ready to help you. So I heard a lot of people saying that's a differentiator.
Because I've looked at, I would hate to think how many platforms I've looked at, and there are platforms that look similar to SpotMe. They do different things, do similar things, but look kind of similar. That are a lot cheaper than you kind of your rate. And I get the impression that value comes from the support that you get and the hand-holding, and also the customization that you're able to do. And I think some people are looking at the similar platforms and expecting them to be able to do a lot more for the price that they're paying. And I think that's an important differentiator that I've seen from my time looking at SpotMe and other platforms. Over the last few months, you and the team have run how many virtual events on the platform? Have you got any idea?
In the hundreds. I think this week we had about 50. Just this week, which completed, we had about 50. And these are events that we service. We also have channel partners and customers who actually run their own events completely self-service. So overall, it's in the hundreds per month.
Are there things that you've noticed for this 3 or 4 months of running virtual events that you think that event organizers really need to think about, or they really need to know?
Wow. Yeah, there is a lot. There's a lot of things. One thing that is the sort of the core, what I see as the core issue, and it's interesting because I was reading about Zoom the other day. And I don't know if you know the story of Zoom, but one of the big differentiator of Zoom is that very early on, they've taken a different route about how they do video. They've invested they've actually built their own video layer almost from like the lowest level you can start. And because they thought this was going to be a differentiator. And I think they were right. And that's why they're being very successful today, is because the product is great. And one of the things that people underestimate today when they think about virtual is, what's the streaming? What's this thing that brings me the speakers and the stage and the sound? What is the underlying tech? And I don't hear people talking about this. I hear people talking about everything else, but what's the underlying streaming tech? And it's a difficult topic. And I think that's one thing that I would invite people to think about. Like, hey, what am I going to get with this platform or that platform? Because at the end of the day, what we see is a lot of people streaming on YouTube and on Vimeo and all these things. And then they come back and they think, hey, can we do more? And yeah, well, not really if you're doing this on YouTube, right? And that's where, there are opportunities with platform that will go a little bit, deeper into the whole streaming.
Well, one thing I know that you've said that I shared on LinkedIn at the start of this week was that you don't think virtual booths are very good. Do you want to kind of expand on that?
Yeah. It's that one is, to be honest, I'm doing a bit of a social media experiment. Um, and so take these things with a pinch of salt. It's funny because
I'm paraphrasing you. I don't think you said it exactly, said that. But,
no.
But that's what I got from it.
It is true. And what's interesting, I said you need something better. I said virtual booth don't work, and then whatever I said, and then I said you need something better, and then everyone made their own conclusion. The people who were running real life physical exhibition all jumped on it and say, yeah, in person is better, right? That was the first conclusion, and then and then there were all the people who were doing. So one of the big debate with this virtual switch is like, is virtual like the 3D, three-dimensional type, or is this something else? And that's under the big debate. And then you had all those people who were doing those 3D virtual reality stuff who jumped in and said, no, it worked. You do it like that, and it's perfect. And my take is a little different. And I always use that metaphor. If you think about e-commerce, if you think about which is, and by the way, which is why we're not going to call this virtual event in a couple of years, right? I think there's a problem with the name here. We don't call it virtual commerce. We call it e-commerce. So if you think about e-commerce, I mean, if you go to Amazon, which is like the biggest e-commerce site in the universe, does it look like you are entering a store, like in 3D with the shopping cart in 3D and, all this stuff? No, it doesn't, because it wouldn't do the job. We didn't do the job properly.
Yeah. And they're confident enough. They're confident enough in the product that they've got to not try and replicate what people used to do.
Yeah. The other product that I like to compare, and it's actually part of our pitch, it's Netflix. Now, Netflix is effectively replacing the movie theater. Now, if you go into the Netflix app, does it look like a movie theater? Absolutely. It's dark. Yes, it's black. And it's got the red, which looks like the seats, right? But that's it. There is nothing like that, anything that looks like a movie theater in the Netflix app or web browser. So I think what I was trying to say is that as far as the booth is concerned, I think there's this flow that people are just trying to replicate the reality, which is not what people expect, and that's a waste of time. And the second thing is, I do think that the whole trade show, and I'm not going to get a lot of friend for saying this, but I think the overall trade show model is a little bit flawed to start with, even in physical.
Well, that's quite interesting, because that would certainly back up some of the initial research that I've been doing, and also my feeling about expos. A couple of weeks ago, I saw someone who'd said that they'd found a little bit of software that allowed you to have background noise in your one-to-one meetings, so it made it a bit more like being at a conference. And I said, when you're on Netflix, do you have people coughing and eating popcorn in the background of the movie? Of course you don't. And I said, be confident about the product. Don't try and replicate the things that people don't like in the digital world.
Have you ever served at a booth, manned the booth at a trade show yourself?
Yeah, I've done that. Yeah.
Do you like it?
No.
I hate it. Trying to escape after 2 minutes. Trying to say, hey, I've got a phone call I need to take, and then I disappear. But it's just like that model. And the second, but interestingly, I was meeting with 20 other CEOs in the region here in Switzerland a couple of weeks ago, and they were all telling me, and they're mid-sized companies, they were all telling me that their business, they're not into events, they're telling me their business is at risk because they have not been able to attend trade shows. And I'm like, is that that sounds weird, because this is, I mean, there's something wrong. I don't have the solution. I had the product idea after that. But that seems like there is this need for, and people like On24, typically understand that, because they made their virtual product all about lead and demand generation, right? Which I think is a good starter, but it's just a webinar at the end. So I think there's something in between that is not the booth, but that is not a webinar, that allows you to get those lead and happy sponsors and happy exhibitors.
We'll see what comes over the next few months, but I've been saying to organisers that what you've got to remember is that your exhibitor never wanted to come to your physical event. They just wanted the leads that you were able to generate. And if you look at virtual as a different way of delivering those leads, then they're going to be happy with that. And what I've been saying to organisers is look at the value proposition from your physical event and replicate that online. Replicate the value and not the event, and you're going to be in a much stronger position.
So we had a US. I was on the phone with a US client, and they are organizing big conferences, like international conferences about, I think, peace or government. I don't remember the topic. Or no, sustainability. It was sustainability because the CEO literally said to us, "Hey, my biggest selling sponsorship item is actually the trash bin." Because he's selling those big, like the green trash bin sponsored by, I don't know, Exxon or whoever was like, and he could sell this for 20 grand or whatever the price tag was. And then his question was like, how do I do this in virtual? And I was like, well, okay, we're not going to have trash, maybe a little recycle bin in the corner. I don't know. But then we strategized, and, it's just like, okay, let's turn this into a sustainability assessment that we're pushing to everybody. It's just a questionnaire, right? But then you're selling like the right to generate thought leadership, feedback surveys, and this kind of things, or even get people interested and intrigued through different ways, but not just like a booth. I think that's
absolutely, and I hope that what comes from this is that organisers start to look at this value proposition for sponsors, and they say at our physical event we were really pushing on this brand awareness, but at a virtual event we can push on thought leadership, and we can push on one-to-one, face-to-face. And that's the things that can deliver a lot of value to our sponsors. And I do think we've been a little bit lazy. And when I go into an organisation, do consultancy, I always look at the sponsorship proposal and I open it up and I get a highlighter pen and highlight how often they've said logo placement. And it's basically giving them it back and saying your sponsorship proposal is 3 pages of putting someone's logo somewhere.
All over the place. Yeah.
We've got to do more than that. And I think virtual allows us to do that.
But it's also true. I mean, if you think about non-sponsored events, it's also true that one of the things I've heard this from customers, a lot of things that we do is with pharmaceutical companies. And those doctors, they are attending many different, they're going to Pfizer, to Merck, to AstraZeneca, right? And then you've got the sales rep calling like the next day and say, hey, how was the event? And what I heard is like, what they often hear on the phone is like, content was great, but what was the company again? And it's just like defeating the whole purpose, right? You've put this content together, and then your primary customer, in this case, the healthcare professional, does not even remember who was behind it. So I think from a branding perspective, and sponsors are perhaps different, but from the main organizer, the whole branding thing, there is a lot to be done. And certainly at SpotMe, we try to do, we're not doing enough, but we're already doing a lot. Like, how can you have this brand that is like, not all over the place, but in a very subtle and memorable way, pushed you to the attendee?
Yeah, I think it's I agree with you. And I think it is much more about helping your sponsors being in a position where they're engaging with people rather than just having the branding and the logos there. So what I'd like to do, Pierre, is if you can kind of look 3 months ahead, what's new, what's going to be new on with SpotMe over that kind of horizon that takes us up to, to maybe September or end of Q3?
Yeah. So I think perhaps I'll start with SpotMe because that's the thing I have perhaps the most control, a little control over. There's 2 things. The first one is if you go people are very, if you go on LinkedIn or Twitter and you see people producing virtual events, what you see is in average about 14, we've counted, right? Over 14 screens that it takes to produce a mid-size virtual event. And I have nothing against screens, but I think this reflects a lot of manual labor. And as a result, it often, impacts quality. So one of the things that we are 100% committed right now here at SpotMe is to make this very simple. So you may not want to be an AV professional, and you'll still be able to produce your own very professionally looking Microsoft or Apple level type of virtual event. And you don't need 25 tools. It's all integrated, and that's what we're working on. You've got your own studio, and that's it. So that's number one. And number two, we already, I think, about 30% of the brief and requests that we're getting now, especially in Europe, is hybrid. It's clear. It's always the same. We've got 100 people at the headquarters, and then we've got 400 people around the world. Like, how can you do this? And people think it's simple, but when you look into the details of like, how do you run like a brainstorming session? How do you do polling? How do you have like a panel discussion where half the panel is here and the other half is there? And then you have all this question around time zone and like, how do you speak the content, and you do part of it on demand? All these things, I don't think anybody really has, including ourselves, has a solution today. And I think that's going to be the market. It's going to be the market to the point it's not even going to be called hybrid. It's going to be called event. And so that's the second biggest thing that we're looking at.
And I hope in a few months' time, we will be talking about hybrid, and then it will become so normal to have a hybrid event that we're talking about, as you said, an e-event or an event, because that's certainly where we've got to go.
Yeah, hybrid sounds like a beast to me. I don't know, maybe it's a language thing, but it seems like a monster. So I just don't like the name of it, but I really like the concept.
My work with clients now is saying you're going to be running a physical element and a virtual element. And my key point that I've been getting across to people is that you've got to look at your virtual event as the same as your physical event, and don't think that this is an inferior product to this. Your physical event's great for some people and your virtual event's great for people, and have them as two separate products that are linked, but be confident when you're selling them. Go out to the market and price them appropriately. And I hope that people get there, because certainly there's some people who still think that the virtual event is a much inferior product from the physical event, and hopefully we can move away from that over time.
Yeah.
But that's been fantastic. I really appreciate your time. Thanks very much.
It was a great time. Thanks, William.